Yo, what is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Awesemo.com NFL Strategy Show. Dave Loughran at Lafayette_D on Twitter. Hit me up. And while you're there, say hello to Ben Rasa at JazzRazDFS and Jordan Vanek at Jordan Vanek DFS. Both of these fellas hanging out today for a Tuesday first look at the Week 5 slate. You got a London game. We won't be hitting on that. Of course, a Thursday night, Sunday, and Monday night game, which means, Ben, that for the first time all season, as we head into bye weeks next week, but for the first time all season, we have a 12-game slate and not 13. I'm perfectly fine when we start condensing these down a little bit.
No doubt about it. One less game doesn't make a huge difference, but every little bit helps. You mentioned we get the London game, and that was nice. So coming off, I was really happy with the game last night. Chargers took care of business. That helped a lot. I'm feeling pretty good heading into Week 5 here.
No doubt. And Jordan, you know, NFL's a fickle sport, small sample, only 17 weeks of the regular season. You had mentioned not the greatest week because Cleveland and Minnesota, but hey, there's no better time than now to start washing that stench off, huh?
Yeah, no, that game burned me quite a bit. I mean, it had a 53-point over-under, and they scored, I think, 28 points maybe in that game, and Nick Chubb just refused to get the ball in the red zone. Baker and Kirk Cousins obviously didn't show up, but I mean, this week, the 12-game slate is huge, especially when that London game is Atlanta versus the Jets. Like, that's a perfect game to just not have on the slate this week.
Yeah, because I don't feel like getting Cordero Patterson wrong again. I mean, that's what it comes down to at this point. Guy's been electric. And yeah, 21 total points in that game. Obviously, the Awesemo crew, including myself, are high on Odell Beckham. Baker Mayfield misclicked on a 62-yard, would have been walk-in touchdown. Just one of those tough type of games, man. And you know, you'd love to have it back, but here we are. And the Minnesota Vikings have as mouthwatering a matchup as you could think about this week, Ben, against Detroit. And you know, all in all, at the top of some of these positions, running back, for example, just to give you a bit of a teaser here, Derrick Henry at Jacksonville, Christian McCaffrey, if he plays against Phillies, one of their bottom-ranked defenses, Dalvin Cook against Detroit. The list goes on. I mean, we are chock full of options at the top.
No doubt about it. There is a lot of, you mentioned, just absolutely fantastic spots for these big targets. A lot of guys to go around. Still 12 games. There's plenty of superstar equity on this slate. So the other thing I liked, you know, Buffalo was in a different stratosphere. There's 17, it closed at 19-point favorites. We've got Tampa as a big favorite, but other than that, it's pretty reasonable games. You got a lot of 3, 4, upwards of 7-point, favorites across the board. That gives us a lot of appeal in terms of stacks because you can run guys back. And most of these games, it seems like will stay pretty competitive.
I think so too. All right, let's dive straight into this then. We got 12 games to touch on. We'll go position by position here. And as always, thanks for hanging out with us, fellas and ladies. I know we got a couple ladies to hang out and have had some nice little cashes lately, which makes me happy to see. We welcome everyone here. Jordan, why do you laugh when I speak?
I don't know, dude. Sometimes
no, not you. I'm sorry, not you. The other Jordan. The other Jordan. I feel like he always assumes, Ben, that I'm going to say something, just that turns things upside down. But that's not the case. I'm calculated.
Very calculated. I know that because before the mics go hot, all the crazy shit that you say, and then you flip that switch. So no doubt about it. You are a true professional.
Oh, thanks, man. Anyway, Jordan Klein producing today's show. Hit that thumbs up for us if you haven't done so yet. Greatly appreciated. We're already almost at 200 and we just started getting underway. So, I mean, look, where's a better place to be right now than watching the first look, hanging out with these fine fellas and talking football for the Week 5 slate. And if you hadn't subscribed yet, we are at 60,600 plus subscribers. Thank you to everyone that has helped us get here and continue to be the largest DFS platform in the YouTube community. I think that's still true. It's got to still be true. I mean, I don't think that anyone has surpassed us quite yet, but yeah, thank you. And subscribe if you haven't done so yet. And if you want to join the channel, hey, go ahead, hit that join down below, get the emojis, the custom badges, and some other cool stuff that comes along with it. Jordan, let's go straight to quarterbacks here. And I guess there's no better place to start than with Kyler Murray. Now, he is expensive, and he's got a matchup against San Francisco in a game that is almost certainly going to have some shootout vibes. Not saying it will, but that it can. 50-point total. Cardinals laying 5.5 at home. And when it comes down to it, again, last week, look at the Rams, who looked, unbeatable coming into week 4. And then Arizona just stomped them in LA. What should we be doing about Kyler Murray here at the top of the position?
I'm not sure I'm going to go towards Kyler just because he is the most expensive quarterback, and San Fran's defense has been pretty good. But I mean, Jalen Hurts in week 2, I believe, against the 49ers, he doesn't have the weapons of Kyler, but he managed 80 rushing yards. And I think in this one, Kyler's going to need to start using his legs. He hasn't done so so far this year, but running quarterbacks like that who can hit the double bonus, it's a cheat code. It's a cheat code in fantasy. Ben's been talking about it all year with Jalen Hurts, who's just been phenomenal. But Kyler hasn't had to run the ball, but he's used his legs in the red zone. I think in this one, he might be a little bit more active against a divisional opponent.
Wait a second. Our boy Awesemo got himself a wrench.
He's moving up in the world.
Yeah. I know. I was actually talking to Tom about that the other day. I just didn't know that we had moved so quickly. That's good to see. What's up, brother? That wrench looks good on you. Yeah. I mean, Ben, when you look at the top, you've got Rodgers against Cincinnati. The Rodgers-Cobb connection was rejuvenated or on Sunday. Tom Brady against Miami. But then Jalen Hurts rounding out the bottom of the 7K guys. Every time this guy plays, whether he's sharp or not, he just tends to put up quality production. And we saw that against Kansas City, 72 total points. Philly scored 30. Of course, one was a garbage time touchdown to Greg Ward, but he's now, he's been one of the most productive quarterbacks. I think he's the QB4 through 4 weeks.
Yeah, he has to do everything for this team. The game scripts fall apart. This is probably the worst matchup for him. Carolina's very good. They're methodical. They have a strong defense. I worry about that, but at the same time, Jordan already talked about this. When you have that dual threat ability and you can get there in multiple ways, it really separates you from the other quarterbacks. So Kyler hasn't shown it just yet. I also think it's coming. It feels like he doesn't run unless he needs to. And I think as these games go on and the Cardinals get in more competitive battles, even though they're very good, we're going to see that true ceiling from him soon enough.
Jordan B says, Laffy, your Eagles may end up with 3 top 10 draft picks. How many of the 3 picks do they fuck up? Well, Devonta Smith looks pretty damn good right now, so I'm not worried about that. They won't get 3 top 10s because if the Colts end up being that bad, there's no way they're giving Carson Wentz 75% of snaps and coughing up a top 10 pick. There's just no way. So if anything, one of them could be like a middle of the road pick, but they won't have 3 top 10s. No way. It's just not going to happen. Jordan, I can't help but look at some of these quarterbacks and just think there's an insane amount of upside. And now Sam Darnold, I know, plug your nose, but hear me out. This guy leads the league in rushing touchdowns, not quarterbacks, not the quarterbacks. He leads the league in rushing touchdowns with 5 and is the 6th quarterback in the league in terms of fantasy points. And now he's got a Philly team that's been gutted pretty much everywhere on the ground, where he can, of course, run for 100 yards and 3 scores, and through the air. This game could actually see real shootout vibes, especially with JC Horn being out. We've seen what can happen to that defense when you lose a top corner. Is there any interest in actually paying a mid 6K price point for Darnold?
For me, no, just because of the fact that I think Philly, they got torched by Mahomes, but with Darnold in this offense, we give up pressure a lot, and that's basically what Philly has with Fletcher Cox just eating our interior line. I think we could see Darnold get sacked a few times, but again, he's been phenomenal this year. He's been throwing for over 300 yards. He's been our running back in the red zone almost. I think Joe Brady's been calling phenomenal games, but I personally am hoping that McCaffrey comes back because I would love to just play McCaffrey because Darnold's been fantastic, but McCaffrey against Philly would just be much more appealing.
McCaffrey goes nuts in this game if he's not limited. And we've seen it before when he returned last year, Ben, from an extended absence. He came back against Kansas City and was the clear RB1. Mike Davis got no work whatsoever. But I know this game only has a 44.5 point total. I also know that you look at betting lines the moment they are released. Do you like this to potentially go over, or do you think it could be more of a defensive battle?
I'm more leaning the latter. I think it could be, I'm not going to say as low scoring as the Niners game against the Eagles, but have some qualities to that. I think Carolina will control tempo more. Sometimes Philly has to play like that just by a product of how the game is. And Kansas City was the perfect example of that. So I think that Carolina is going to keep it more conservative, just the way they play. But to speak to Darnold for a second, maybe I'm reading too much into narratives. I think it's over for him on the ground. Everyone is talking about this. The reason that he's scoring on the ground is because no one pays attention to Sam Darnold, and now teams have to. So I have a feeling he may end the season with like 7 rushing touchdowns, something like that. I have a feeling teams are not going to just let them have him pull the ball and walk into the end zone. That's going to really impact his ceiling going forward.
I don't disagree with you at all, by the way, but it's still outrageous that he's gotten this far. You know, like he has more touchdowns this season than he has in his whole career.
Yeah, but now if you would have asked me how many touchdowns does Sam Darnold have on the ground before week 4, I would have said he scored against Houston. Maybe he has 1 or 2. Like now everybody knows this. And I think defenses are actually going to incorporate this in. And when they're in the red zone, announcers, defenses, people are going to be trained on Sam Darnold for the first time ever. That's going to make it a lot more difficult for him to just walk in, because he's been untouched on these plays, basically. It's insane.
I will say the one rushing touchdown he had against Dallas, or the long one, was 25 yards out. They basically motioned Chuba out of the backfield, and Dallas left the middle of the field open. They pulled a guard and QB draw, and he just kind of ran his way into the end zone. I kind of think it's closer to like Tannehill with Tennessee. Like, I think that's I think he ends up with 7 or 8 rushing touchdowns, but like that's it. I don't think he's going to go rush for 10 or anything crazy.
No, and it's not like the yardage totals have been insane either, which is you're right. Which Tannehill, I believe, had 7 rushing touchdowns last year, and a couple of them were from outside, you know, like borderline red zone. But yeah, a lot of them were in tight too, because of the amount of attention that's going to guys like Derrick Henry and AJ Brown in the red zone. It makes a big difference. Ben, let me ask you one question though, and I get the same take from Jordan as well. Kirk Cousins, okay, yesterday, or God, I keep saying yesterday, Sunday, underwhelming performance for sure, but he has been very good this season. I mean, he's been one of the more reliable quarterbacks outside of week 4. He's gone 25 plus fantasy points in 3 straight, and that's just because you have great weapons and the ability to move the ball downfield at the blink of an eye with guys like Jefferson, even KJ Osborne. And then you have Thielen, who's just been a red zone monster. They get the Detroit Lions pass defense and run defense. Do you think this ends up being just a Dalvin Cook game, or could we be seeing another Kirk Cousins game where he goes for 4 touchdowns? Because for me, I could see a game for Cousins where it's like 220 yards and 4 scores. So just hyper efficient, but not a ton of volume.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely like Cousins this week, but there are a couple of things that are not ideal. One, he's a 0 in the rushing game, so he's going to have to get there completely on passing statistics. And you mentioned there are times where he's hyper efficient, but we don't want efficiency. We want volume. On the other side of it, though, you mentioned Detroit's secondary. They're dead last in the league. Passing yards allowed per attempt, almost 10 per attempt. That's absolutely abysmal. Even better, Minnesota secondary is 28th. So this is not like, oh, they're going to roll over them. I think that Detroit will score with them just fine. And that could be exactly what we need to get Cousins, towards the ceiling.
What about you, Jordan?
With Dalvin Cook's like getting banged up, I do think Cousins is in a great spot, because Dalvin's been exiting games multiple times so far this year. He's just not 100% healthy. And not playing Seattle made Alexander Madison go back to earth, getting 10 carries for 20 yards this past weekend. I do look to the Minnesota pass catchers, but if I'm going to, I'm getting Thielen and Jefferson with it, or going Conklin and Jefferson, because I think for Cousins to get there, 2 pass catchers will have to have big days.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I do think, though, that if Dalvin Cook's volume is limited, it's just going to be kind of that void will be filled by Alexander Madison, even if he's not, wildly efficient. So we'll see. It depends on the flow of this game. And speaking to what Ben was mentioning, Minnesota, yeah, I mean, I understand that they only allowed 14 points to Cleveland, and that ended up being just a low-scoring game that not many of us anticipated. But all in all, this has been a team that has been involved in some shootouts and has a weak secondary. So if we see Jared Goff actually end up putting up decent numbers and Kirk Cousins forced to throw a little bit more, not that I think they're going to be playing from behind here, they're touchdown favorites, this game could get really interesting. And we'll get into that with DeAndre Swift and some of these other options like Hawkinson once we get into the skill positions. But Ben, any guys here in the value territory or mid-range that we haven't touched on at quarterback?
I mean, I generally, when I talk about quarterback, I don't see as much incentive to pay down. You're just not getting as big a discount. And there's just so many elite signal callers on these near full game slates. I think you could, in a large field tournament, if you want to say, okay, everyone likes Minnesota, I'm going to flip it. I'm going to run it back with a Jefferson. I'm going to run it back with a Thielen. I'll go Goff, Hawkinson, and Swift. I don't know, just take a couple guys from the Lions team, because I do think there are scenarios where they start to resemble what they did early in the year, where they were scoring wildly and just not able to do it. But other than that, Goff at 53, I don't see a ton else that I'd want to go with. I guess if you believe that Trey Lance is the real deal, I get it, in a game that they're going to have to put up points as well.
Yeah, and that game, again, is it going to shoot out? I don't know. But if Garoppolo does end up sitting, then Trey Lance with that upside in his legs and clearly made some mistakes, but can connect on the long ball is interesting. Jordan, I'll throw a couple of names out there towards the bottom. You tell me what you think. Trey Lance, 5,700 against Arizona. Jameis against the Washington secondary that's been crushed, but they just want to feed Alvin Kamara the ball. He's had career high carries in back-to-back weeks now. And then Mack Jones against Houston at 5,300. Any interest in any of these guys, or are we sticking more in the mid-range and upper tier?
I would say Jameis, but the way the Saints have just been playing like football this year, where they have a 38% pass rate so far. It's just very, very ugly. And I don't know if Washington's going to push them to throw the ball. And I think personally, the mid tier, the two quarterbacks that I like the most is Daniel Jones against Dallas and Joe Burrow against the Packers. Jair Alexander exited the game towards the end of the game. I'm not sure if he's going to play this week. And the Dallas Cowboys haven't given up less than 300 yards passing so far this year. Every single quarterback has thrown for over 300. And Daniel Jones against the Saints this past weekend looked great, and Saquon looked like he was back. I think that game is a game that I'm interested in a lot, because Dallas can obviously score in New York, but Daniel Jones, I mean, their Dallas secondaries caused a lot of turnovers, but they're not exactly holding teams to, under 300 so far.
I like it. What about Taylor Heineke? Sorry, somebody mentioned him in the chat. This is a matchup that, seems daunting, but to your point, Daniel Jones just threw for, and granted there was overtime, but over 400 yards against New Orleans just this past week. There are a decent amount of mid-range and even value guys that you could at least throw some shots at in large field tournaments. Is Taylor Heineke one of them, or would you just rather go to Jones at the same price?
I would rather go to Jones. Heineke did it against Atlanta. I know Daniel Jones did it to the Saints, but Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley looked like he was back, and the Saints defense has, Kenny Golladay actually also returned, and I don't see Heineke being able to do it. I know he did it against Atlanta, but I just can't imagine him doing it to the Saints. All
right, let's talk about running backs then. And hey, almost at 100 likes, got 300, almost 50 people watching. If you haven't hit that thumbs up yet, go for it. We're not going to, we appreciate all of the support when you hit that thumbs up. Get us over 100. I mean, is that too much to ask? Ben, running back, Henry, McCaffrey. Let's assume he's active. Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook. I can throw Kamara in there against Washington at 8,600, but I have some real hesitation going here. I love that he is getting a ton of work on the ground, but he wasn't targeted a single time last week in a loss to the New York Giants. I mean, what do we do at the top of the position?
I mean, big time names, but honestly, I think some pretty reasonable question marks for each and every one. So you look at these guys, Kamara, that's a real concern. Clearly the Saints are operating differently this year, and the ability to get targets are so much more valuable than carries. You need an infinite amount more of carries to make up for these targets, just because of the full point PPR nature on a site like DraftKings. Henry's been doing just that. I mean, his just couple targets each and every game, that makes a huge difference. It's like an extra pseudo touchdown in some of these scenarios. So I don't mind him. The one thing Jacksonville's actually been okay at is stopping the run at times. Fifth in the league, 3.5 yards allowed per rushing attempt. I still think it's Henry and it doesn't really matter, but we've talked about so many top end players and we're going to talk about a lot more in the receivers. To me, I'm going to try to save some money at running back more often than not and hit that next tier, not the top.
Yeah, Derrick Henry, another 33 carries last game. Jeremy McNichols saw 12 targets, by the way, with A.J. Brown and Julio out, which was crazy. But yeah, Jordan, I think there are a lot of different ways to go here. And tomorrow when we do our ownership show in the morning, 11 a.m. Eastern, it'll be very interesting to see where early ownership projections are sitting on Henry, McCaffrey, and Cook, and even Kamara, given that all of them have beatable matchups.
Yeah, no. I mean, the thing with Derrick Henry that concerns me too is towards the end of that game, Ben Jones got hurt, Roger Saffold got hurt. And if they're missing two of their best run blockers, like I know it's still Derrick Henry and he's going to be able to get the 30 touches, but I expect him to come in pretty popular especially if McCaffrey misses, because Kamara has been killing people and Dalvin's not exactly healthy. So I think that's a good leverage spot to get away from Henry this week if these linemen miss and McCaffrey misses.
You know, it's funny. I still remember last year against Kansas City. We talked about this earlier with McCaffrey. I still remember very clearly that he came back in week 9 and there was all of this chatter that he was going to be limited. I'm sure you guys remember this, and his ownership ended up being like way lower than it should have been. And if you took some stabs at McCaffrey in that game, he saw 18 carries, 69 yards and a touchdown, caught all 10 targets for 82 yards and a score through the air. Now, I'm not suggesting one game from last year is going to dictate what happens this week. But if it is the case, right, same coaching staff, that McCaffrey comes back, Ben, and it's like, you know, he might be limited. We'll see how he looks. It's not unrealistic to think that people will be a little gun shy on that, given that you have Dalvin Cook or Derrick Henry, especially Derrick Henry at the top. And McCaffrey could end up going a little bit under-owned in one of the best rushing matchups that you're going to get of the season.
There's no doubt about that. I do think it's scary when you're talking about a hamstring and him coming back pretty much on the earlier timeline. You know, it seemed like this could linger for a little longer if he plays, but you did speak to this last year. It's true. People see the Q tag. People aren't going to know. That's going to, you know, depress his ownership. And when you're talking about a guy this good, sub 9K, I get it. It's also very, very scary because if he's limited in any way, it almost becomes impossible for him to get there.
What are you doing in the mid-range then? Because it seems like you got a couple of decent names here and guys like Barkley and Elliott, who everyone was kind of just, they're done. I can't go near them. Prices came down. And now they've been playing really well. Don't forget, Ezekiel Elliott was $6,200 just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I think these guys are rounding into form. Saquon certainly got it done, and he got it done. Of course, it was through the air, but that's smart. You can't run in New Orleans, and we saw that. He had a pretty pedestrian ground attack, but he was able to do it with the targets. And as we talked about with Kamara, that's how you really solidify yourself. So I like Saquon, but I like Nick Chubb a lot. The Chargers defense is really, really good, but the weak spot is in the front. You can run against them. They're 30th in the league in rushing yards allowed per attempt. That feeds right into what Cleveland wants to do. So minor short week. I think the Browns give them a healthy dose of Nick Chubb on the ground, and I expect him to be really busy, sub 7K, lowest price point possibly of the year for him.
What about you, Jordan?
I'm going to Saquon just because, I mean, I think this will be the week where teams are an elite running back gets the 20 plus carries with against the Dallas Cowboys defense. Cause I mean, the Cowboys are giving up 6.7 yards a carry, but only one team has ran the ball 20 times against them. And it was Carolina. And with Chuba and a mixture of people, they were really able to get over 104 yards rushing on them. Saquon needs to have a big game this week, and his carries, he jumped up from, I think, the percentage of carries, 62% week 1, then on Thursday night, 54%, then 72%, and now 81%. He's finally, I think, healthy. He broke tackles last week. Saquon and Nick Chubb as well are in just two great spots to smash.
So Ben, I look down the board a little bit and I see a couple guys that have been disappointing, but could be in pretty favorable spots this week. We talked about Jared Goff and the potential for a shootout here. Might not be what people are anticipating. The game doesn't have the highest total, but neither defense is particularly good. DeAndre Swift, right after Dan Campbell's like, yeah, he's deserved more work. This guy, hey, we got to get him out there more, get the ball in his hands more. Well, he had 8 carries, and Jamal Williams saw significantly more work on the ground than he did with 14, almost doubled him up. But at the same time, Jamal Williams did not see a single target against the Chicago Bears. Swift was targeted a lot, and that's where your bread's going to be buttered when it comes to him. 6 targets, 33 yards. He should have had a touchdown in this game, but didn't. And then as far as snaps are concerned, there was just no contest whatsoever. DeAndre Swift against the Bears played 73% of the snaps to Williams 30 and ran 32 routes on the day. He's the clear pass catching back at this point. It's just how much can we rely on that, and how much should we be worried about the fact that Jamal Williams was getting the majority of touches on the ground?
I mean, it's definitely a reasonable concern, but also when you talk about this game, I think a lot of the scenarios that play out the most likely benefit Swift more than Williams in that situation. So I think he's attractive in the sense that you can pair him with Goff. He actually fits into some stacks that are a little unique. And then B, he's got a floor if the game falls apart. So I don't mind it a ton. It's never an ideal scenario. You always want him to consolidate all of it, but there's not that many backs that do that anymore. So coming off a disappointing game, I trust that Detroit will be able to move the ball in this matchup. I feel pretty good with Swift at a pretty reasonable price point.
I like him quite a bit too. And he's going to be involved in the passing game. And by the way, it's not like he didn't see any carries. He still saw 8. So 14 total looks on the day, which to me is encouraging enough to say, all right, well, if the rushing volume gets up a little bit more, then we could be in business. What do you make of Swift and a lot of these mid-range backs that we haven't touched on yet, Jordan?
I love Swift because of obviously his usage in the air, and just the Vikings have been awful. I mean, you saw in week 3, Chris Carson had like 80 yards rushing before halftime, and then he got hurt. I think running backs can have explosive days against them. Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt weren't able to, but that was just a credit of Baker just not being able to be there as a passer. James Robinson does stand out to me against Tennessee just because of the fact that they finally just made Carlos Hyde inactive this past weekend. And if that happens again, like, he's kind of falling into that volume spot, and they were able to run the ball pretty well against Cincy. And James Robinson, when he gets the touches, he's a good running back. And I like him more than Chuba because I think Chuba gets more carry siphoned from Royce Freeman and Rod Smith than people saw or anticipated last week. And everybody assumes when McCaffrey goes down, like, the next guy is just going to get all the touches. And that's just not the case, while James Robinson will be able to get more touches against Tennessee.
Do you buy into this being a shoulder injury that sidelined Carlos Hyde? Because that's what they reported it as.
I mean, I just don't trust Urban Meyer at all. I mean, the guy stayed back and partied in Cleveland. I'm not 100% sure what to think of it, but if he's sidelined again, I think James Robinson is just a great play.
Yeah, I'm pretty enticed by this too, Ben. I mean, if that's the case, goal line carries to himself. On the other hand, if Carlos Hyde is active, I'd be lying to you if I said I couldn't see Urban Meyer just coming in and throwing Carlos Hyde back into the mix. I mean, at this point, I don't trust him, as Jordan said, but at the same time, James Robinson was he was very good against Cincy. I know his yards per carry wasn't phenomenal, but he had some big, like, strong runs, powerful runs, got into the end zone twice, wasn't targeted a lot. But how do you approach a situation like this where there's so much uncertainty?
I think that's just it. Ownership will play a big part of it if he's very, very popular. And I don't think that'll be the case. And we don't have answers to these questions. I'll probably look elsewhere and I'll be okay with that. But if we get the right circumstances, and I think that's probably the most likely scenario, I feel very comfortable with Robinson. He can contribute in all areas. They use Lawrence a lot, on these quarterbacks, and you could say that can vulture some of it, but at the same time, it keeps defenses honest. So it should help efficiency for a guy like Robinson. Tennessee They obviously have some serious issues when you lose to the Jets. This is no gimme for Tennessee. I know it's the Jaguars, and I do think Tennessee will win the game. It's a 4-point spread. This is not some 2-touchdown spread. So this is a pretty good spot for Jacksonville altogether, and I expect them to play okay.
Stephen Ben says Chase Edmonds double-digit fantasy points every week. Yeah, and then vultured at the goal line every single week. I mean, that's not fun at all. Connor has 2 touchdowns in back-to-back games now, where where Chase Edmonds said he'd gotten one of them would have had a huge game.
Played him last week, and I really liked the spot. I thought that game could get up and down. I do think we're seeing not the floor for Edmonds because that's ridiculous, but I want to see what happens if the Cardinals eventually they're going to fall behind. They're going to lose some games. That may really help Edmonds. I thought that might happen against the Rams. I think it's very possible here against the Niners. So keep that in mind. Certainly when they're rolling, Connor is really getting the benefit of the doubt over a guy like Edmonds.
Is there any value for you at running back, Jordan, the way we see it right now? Because I'm looking at a Damian Harris thinking he could probably do better than 4 carries for -4 yards like last week.
Yeah, I do love the spot for Damian Harris, but if Joe Mixon does miss, Samaje Perine for 4K is like he's going to be super popular. But against Green Bay, if he's the main guy because they haven't used any other running back so far this year, I do love the spot for him just because of volume that he'll get.
All right, yeah, I mean, I don't know, Ben. I see Harris in a game where they're 9.5-point favorites, and I'm pretty enticed by that. The last 2 games, his target or his carries have been brutal, but no one else is really getting those carries. It's difficult for me to see Belichick going down in this game. I don't see any way Houston can move the ball effectively whatsoever, whether it's raining or not. And of course, in Houston, we don't care about that, but I definitely think that Damian Harris could have that type of game where he shows up this week. The only question is, should he be cheaper coming off of the 2 weeks we've seen in recent history?
Probably, but if he's not going to be remotely popular just because people are going to look and say, oh, and there's no team in the league to me that's less correlated week to week than the Patriots. Like they didn't even, and I give them credit. They saw Tampa's front. And I said, we're not even going to try to run the ball. Why try?
And almost won the game.
Absolutely. I love that about them. And that was something, in the prop markets, you can take advantage of that. But this is a totally different scenario. I think Harris could push for week 1 type touches in this spot. So if he gets that, all systems go. I like him as a bounce back candidate a lot.
Yeah, no doubt. Listen, the heaviest prop I was on for week 4 was Damian Harris under 49.5 rushing yards. So yeah. I'm with you. And remember week 1, we talked about this with Dallas. McCarthy and them basically said, we're not going to try and run against you and almost won the game.
And Zeke under in that game was one of my favorite props there. Yeah. It's just Tampa's front changes the dynamic a ton. And yeah, I have no problem with Harris. People mentioned in chat, we had a couple questions on Fournette. I think that's fine. They're a huge favorite, but there's going to be a lot of touchdowns to go around for the Buccaneers.
Anyone else for either of you guys that comes in at a discounted price point, Jordan, and then you, Ben?
For me,
there's not much out there.
No, it's not, unless anybody gets hurt during the week. I'm just not really interested in any of these. I mean, maybe Trey Sermon against Arizona because how many touches he had, but it's going to be a negative game script, and I don't think Trey Sermon's that good. That's the only other guy I could even see possibly playing.
What about you, Ben?
I don't know if the Bears have any running backs, but if they do, the Raiders, I don't trust that front. I attacked Eckler last night on the ground. They can't stop anybody. So you've got whatever's going on in Chicago. I don't love that spot, but if one
Damian
of those
Williams.
backs, I guess, yeah, if he's okay, and it appears that he is, I think you could do worse than that. There's a chance that they keep it on the ground and keep that game close.
Yeah, God, if Damian Williams is out.
Khalil Herbert. I played Pop Warner with Khalil Herbert.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, no, he's from down here. He went to Douglas High School. He's fast. He's not the best running back, but he's pretty much average at everything. So he'll be able to I think he'll be able to be fine at 4K.
Minimum salary against Las Vegas. Yeah. I mean, there's not much else out there. And it's not like you even have Tariq Cohen to siphon off those passing yards either. So, I mean, he'd probably be chalky and Chicago's offense stinks. So again, that's why we wait for ownership and see how that turns out. But I think as of now, it looks like Damian Williams is probably going to play. But yeah, there's really not much there unless another injury forces someone into action. Like, I don't know, Ben, Samaje Perine, it's very strange to me. DraftKings always preemptively prices guys up, right? They did not touch Samaje Perine's price point. He's at 4K. He's at the bottom. And I don't think you would say Joe Mixon is like a lock to start in week 5.
No doubt about it. And yeah, Jordan mentioned Perine earlier. And I think as you work down, it's just a question of opportunity cost in the sense that you're paying really down at a very lucrative position of running back. So unless I really jam and maybe go to like a top tier Arizona stack or something, I'm going to hopefully not have to go that low because I like Harris and those mid 4 net guys a lot more than these replacement level players for either the Bears or the Bengals.
All right. And yes, I'm a Tulsa guy. Rojo's dead to me. I've told you that already.
Yeah.
He's dead to me. It's over. I've lost my ass on rostering Rojo way too many times in the past. I've learned from my mistakes. It took a while, but we're there. If you want to be someone that doesn't make mistakes, you should have already signed up at Yahoo with the link that we have in the description or that Jordan's about to throw in the chat, because you'll get 2 free months of Awesemo Plus Platinum, literally everything on the site, from ownership to top stacks to boom bust to player projections to the lineup builder, all of the premium articles, all of these tools, amazing tools built and used by Awesemo himself. Alex Baker, #1 ranked DFS player out there. He's won a ton of money using these tools. And so have a lot of our subs. There's no doubt about it. I think, did Neil just win another 300K last night?
He did.
Guy's a machine.
He really is.
And you should check him out on the Saturday strategy show as well. He's done a great job with Greg doing and fitting. This is very fitting. The tournament strategy show, how to win large field tournaments. The guy's quite decent at it, very humble too, but he knows how to win. And he uses these tools. Rich Green just took down 560K in the showdown the other day. He's in our Slack chat. He uses these tools. I mean, what better time than now? You're getting in on $180 value for no more than $10. No more than $10. All you have to do is go over to Yahoo using the link in the description or in the chat, sign up and deposit. You got to be a first-time user and enter a contest, enter a paid contest. Yahoo also gives you $10 when you jump over there too, if you wanted to enter like the Sunday Million or something. But seriously, just take advantage of it, because you already get to play DFS over there. Then you get 2 free months of the tools, everything on the site, and not just for football either, for every single sport. We have PGA, MMA, NASCAR, NFL, NBA's coming up, MLB, everything, esports, everything. If they have contests, we got content for it. No matter what, we got tools for Yahoo, DraftKings, FanDuel, everything. Use that promo for sure and sign up. And when you do, they'll send your information over to us, and we'll reach out to you with how to sign up and get your free 2 months. So, Jordan, you threw that in chat? Cool. All right. Yeah, check it. I mean, I shouldn't have to say anything more. It's 2 free months for depositing $10 and playing over at Yahoo. It's beautiful. All right. Wide receivers. Jordan, kick it off with you. Devontae Adams, a disappointing week, but the guy is still a monster. And then Justin Jefferson coming into a matchup against Detroit. There are some really, really good options here. The one that stands out to me as ridiculous is I don't know how DeAndre Hopkins is still priced where he is. I feel like he should be cheaper than this at this rate.
Yeah, no, he definitely should. I think that rib injury is just really holding him back, because with receivers, it's an awful thing to have your ribs not be able to, or cracked and pain and different things. But Justin Jefferson against the Lions is just an absolute smash spot. He's going to come in pretty popular, but like if you look at the game log of the Lions, Deebo Samuel went for 189 and a touchdown against them. Darnell Mooney 5 for 125. Devontae Adams 8 for 121. He's got the highest average or ADOT. He's got 23% target share. He's running 96% of the routes. He's just phenomenal player. I think this is just an easy, no questions asked, just play Justin Jefferson at this price. I know it's priced heavy, but the Lions are going to give up 100 yards to him this week, unless he gets any injury or anything like that.
What about you, Ben, at the top?
Yeah, there's no doubt. Hopkins I always love the game theory aspect of no one wants to go there, but in this case, I think that it's too much risk still for not enough reward, because Adams, Jefferson, if McCaffrey sits, DJ Moore is unstoppable as well. He's going to see 10 plus targets once again. McLaurin's the alpha for Washington, and they're, Heineke's more than willing to give him opportunities. So you have so many guys around them. Minnesota to me is definitely in the best spot. That's a product of Detroit's defense being non-existent. After that, though, I think really pick your poison. Deebo Samuel's up there as well. I like him quite a bit against Arizona. They're going to need points. So as I mentioned, I'm going to try to save a little money at running back. It's because I would love to get 2 or 3 of these guys if possible.
Yeah. And the biggest concern for me with Hopkins, I don't think, I think, yeah, the ribs are probably bothering him, but just the way that this ball has been spread around so much is what worries me. And you look at his first 2 weeks where he scored, and 1 week he had 2 touchdowns, still only had 8 and 4 targets in those games. He doesn't have more than 8 targets in a game this season. You look at the target breakdown for this team, it's 25 Hopkins, 24 AJ Green, 22 Edmonds, 18 Kirk, 18 Moore, 16 Max Williams. What am I supposed to do with that? That's what bothers me the most, because I know with Justin Jefferson and Devonta Adams, we're going to get targets. We're going to get volume every single week. And I can't get away from that. I'm with you on DJ Moore. Even if McCaffrey plays, I wouldn't be surprised if Moore just has a big game. But in the mid-range, Ben, Adam Thielen, to me, I know you haven't had that huge explosive game from a yardage standpoint, and I'm not sure how many of them we're going to get this season, to be fair, but he still has been targeted 34 times in 4 games. Like the opportunities are there. The red zone opportunities are going to be there for him. And Detroit's just so bad at containing opposing passing attacks that I think a mid 6K price point on Adam Thielen is more than reasonable as well.
No doubt about it. And you can do pretty much anything with him. You can go full Minnesota stack. Jefferson's going to be very popular, and you should. You can get a Minnesota stack without Jefferson and hope that you run really good with touchdown equity with a guy like Thielen, who has 4 touchdowns already this year. He can be a one-off if you want exposure to Minnesota and you don't have the money. So I love him. He's in a range with a lot of guys that are banged up. You've got the Tennessee guys there. Pittsburgh's a mess. Keenan Allen, Godwin, CeeDee Lamb types, no problem with them. But again, the matchup against Detroit is just so intoxicating. It's hard not to like Thielen.
What about you here in the mid-range, Jordan?
For me, I think with, Joe Mixon's injury, like I'm just going to go to Jamar Chase, who's been phenomenal. I think with Jair Alexander getting a little banged up, I believe he was concussed. I'm not 100% sure on the injury, but against a Green Bay defense that has given up some yards to receivers this year, Deontay Johnson just had a big game with Big Ben, and Jamar Chase has just been fantastic so far this year. And if you look at like the touchdowns of Green Bay that have given up, Deontay Harris had a touchdown, big one, and Deontay Johnson this past week. That's where I would go in the mid range. And the other intriguing one is Kenny Golladay, which is something you had listed. I didn't even see his price until a few moments ago. How do you feel about attacking this Dallas defense? Do you think Diggs will shadow him?
I don't know. Here's the thing. Are we assuming that Shepard and are we just assuming that Shepard and Slayton are going to be out? Because I don't know. I don't know yet. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
Sounds like your house is being ransacked by burglars.
Let them try. I don't know. I guess the FedEx guy, they always knock. Why do they knock? You don't need to knock. So, okay. And he's gone. All right. I think with Shepard and Slayton, when you're dealing with hamstring injuries, they could be out for multiple weeks. So I'm looking at Kenny Golladay in this respect and saying, even if there is some shadow coverage, I don't think there really will be to the extent where it's like 100% of snaps. I would definitely look to going back to Kenny Golladay here. Now, with that said, Jordan, there are some good players priced in that range. You've already mentioned Jamar Chase. We don't know what's going on with Jair Alexander. That's significant. You have Devontae Smith, who just looks like a beast out there. The amount of separation he's creating is insane. I'll even go down, and this will gross you guys out, but Jacoby Myers is another one. The guy's targeted at an insane clip, just not getting a ton of opportunity to catch downfield, but he's among the league leaders in deep balls. We'll get to the bottom, but I actually want to close out these mid-range options, Ben, with you. There are a decent amount in that high mid 5K range.
Definitely. I think, pending what's up with Alexander, Jamar Chase is just fantastic. He's explosive seemingly every game, and it's a competitive game. Cincinnati at home. They get the long week. I don't mind that. It's a 3-point spread, 50.5-point total. Smith is interesting. No problem with there. Odell is the one that I'm really looking to potentially just to zig where everyone liked him. It's set up for kind of that breakthrough spot, and it just didn't happen. And he still had good targets. He just couldn't really connect. You guys talked at the top of the show that it was closer than the line probably shows. Maybe I'll hang on. I think you get the price bump. People have soured on him. I don't think that's the worst tournament play, but clearly I think the guys right below him are safer.
What about you, Jordan?
I'm not sure how I feel about the Odell matchup, or just because of Baker and his quarterback play.
Yeah.
The one thing I will note about Devontae Smith, I think CJ Henderson's going to have another week of actually learning the Carolina Panthers playbook. And this past week, and it was funny, I saw a report that we were yelling coverage to him. We wanted him on the closest sideline, or close to our sideline, and we're just yelling him, hey, you're guarding 19, or whoever the case may be, which is pretty funny. But Marvin Jones has been, great this year with DJ Chark going out. Like, the targets are just going to be to Visca and Marvin Jones. I think Trevor Lawrence is just going to pepper him. And Tennessee gave up big plays to Corey Davis and Jamison Crowder last week. So I think this Tennessee pass defense is very, very beatable.
Steven mentioned he doesn't think they have a lot of faith in Mack Jones throwing deep. Maybe not, but like I said, you have a ton of deep ball opportunities for Jacoby Myers. I'm not just making this up, like far more than Nelson Aguilar. I'll tell you right now, Jacoby Myers he has six deep targets this season. Aguilar has 7. So, okay, Aguilar has 1 more, but that's 13 between the two of them. They are getting those looks. It's just they haven't connected on them yet. And if they do, I'll be willing to give them a look. But I think it could be a very run-heavy approach this week from New England. Ben, I am kind of tempted to go back to Robbie Anderson, but I know it'll end poorly. Laviska Shenault, though, and you'll love hearing this, is the one that intrigues me the most because he had 100 air yards in the first 3 weeks and then 91 air yards in that game after DJ Chark went down. So I think that Chark's injury may have just defaulted Urban Meyer to using Shenault more downfield and more like the guy he should be used as. If that's the case, I just have no faith in this Tennessee defense right now. Shenault might actually be a decent option if they use him all over the place.
Yeah, I think, again, Jacksonville's a team that we're going to have some frustrating data points and pain points, but we're also going to find things because they've got a lot of weapons and a lot of guys that can produce in the right circumstances. So it's not going to be consistent, but I feel pretty confidently that Jacksonville is going to be a viable tournament team more often than not on slates. And Shenault is one of those guys. He's got the talent. He's got the matchup. He's got the price. When you really look at it like that, it's like, what's not to like? What's not to like is that this team has no idea what they're doing, and they're led by a coach who doesn't really have any semblance of an offensive scheme right now. So that's the big concern. But in a range with a lot of other guys that maybe not even relevant to their offensive game plans, I think that Shenault could push for most volume in the entire 4K range.
I don't disagree. And I'm actually kind of excited about it. Jordan, guys like Tim Patrick are down there playing almost all of the snaps. Tough matchup last week, coming into a slightly better one this week against Pittsburgh. I'm just throwing names out there. Any discounted receivers, $5,000 or less, that you want to get some exposure to this week?
I think Brandon Ayuk. I know that he's obviously been up and down and he's been killing people this week, but in a game where I expect Arizona to be up early, they're going to have to throw the ball. We don't know what we're going to see from Trey Lance, but I think Ayuk could benefit from him because of, being able to throw the ball a little bit differently than Jimmy G. Other than that, I think Darnell Mooney with Bill Lazor supposedly calling plays, is a great spot against the Raiders, who had a few deep balls that could have gone to Mike Williams that Herbert just overthrew. And the Raiders, with all the corners that they're dealing with injured, like Darnell Mooney looked good with Fields last week. Hopefully Fields gets another start because I just don't want to see Andy Dalton out there. Yeah, no, this range usually starts to come about once like the week kind of settles in, where we get like, oh, Marquez Valdez isn't playing. Now we can go to Randall Cobb, who should get an uptick in targets. I don't know. How are you guys?
Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, I have no problem with the guy like Cobb. You know, you're looking at kind of those alternative players to stacks if you're going with like an alpha and then some of these secondary guys. One guy I'll bring up, they should be throwing, and once again, Will Fuller has gotten hurt. I think that Waddle could be busy. We saw him have obscene targets and receptions against the Raiders, but he couldn't do anything with it. And that's kind of atypical. He's more of an explosive gadget type player. I do think in a game where they're double-digit dogs against a Tampa Bay secondary that's absolutely atrocious, they are getting exposed, and seemingly every week they lose another guy to injury. So I wouldn't be surprised for Waddle to be busy once again. Parker's going to draw the most coverage, but Waddle will slide in to a big role in Miami's offense this week.
It's kind of crazy though, right? Like he has one deep target all season. And I mean, I would have to guess that his ADOT is maybe the lowest or one of the lowest in the league. Like I hear what you're saying, Ben. Eventually that you would think that has to balance itself out, right? But man, he's okay. His ADOT is 3.8.
But even if it doesn't, I guess what I'm saying is, yes, I think it will balance it out. But he's similar to Rondale Moore. He's going to start to break a few of these off after the catch. And right now, he just hasn't gotten loose. Jalen Waddle is incredibly explosive. So you look at someone like Rondale Moore, a lot of his passes at times are these bubble screens, not when he's 40 yards in the clear on some of those touchdowns. But to me, Waddle will start to open it up regardless if the ADOT improves.
What about Devontae Parker at $600 more?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that he's going to be primed for the most target share. He's had, 14, 18, 32 targets in 4 weeks. That's very, very good. I don't care who's playing quarterback for Miami. I think it's not a huge drop off one way or the other. All systems go. I just think if you're really salary, if you're shopping and trying to save, Waddle's not that big a drop off either at the same time.
If you guys are looking for some free content, MLB Showdown ownership projections are free today over at Awesemo.com. Even if you're not a premium sub, that's okay. You can check them out. And the PGA rankings. Ben, what do we got coming up for PGA this week?
Yeah, actually the best swing season tournament, the Shriners, a lot of newcomers. So there's a lot of value. The tools are so important this time of the year when you have these new golfers that we maybe haven't seen. So don't forget that PGA is going on still. I did a show yesterday. We'll have live before lock tomorrow. A great time to just take a peek at some of these guys, even if you just use it for 2022 when the season really gets started.
All right, let's hit on tight ends. And then one defense from everybody, 3K and under. There's actually a lot of them this week that stand out, I think, Jordan. But talking tight end, you have no Travis Kelce, but then Darren Waller in a tier of his own, and then it falls off. The guy went from 19 targets in week 1. He's now seen 7 targets in 3 consecutive games going up against Chicago. Are you willing to pay this premium for Darren Waller, or are we looking a little bit further down?
As of right now, no. The Chicago defense has been pretty good to tight ends, and like the only 2 tight ends that they face that have, similar type of talent as Darren Waller is actually TJ Hawkinson this past week. And Hawkinson saw 8 targets, but only managed 4 for 42. I think the Raiders are going to continue to spread the ball around, and they're going to continue to take the deep shots with Ruggs and attack them in other ways. I'm not sure I'm going to pay up for Darren Waller this week. Last week, I was able to find some cheap tight ends that did pretty well for me.
Ben, I like this 5K range quite a bit, and I'll probably get burned again, but I really don't mind going back to the well with Kittle. He's seen 20 targets over his last 2 games, right? Like he's not that he's not getting targeted. He is 11 in week 4. He just couldn't come up with it. And I don't know if we mentioned him. I think you guys may have, but Deebo Samuel, I will just continue to play this guy, even at his price. He's been a target monster, and he is legitimately elite at this point. But Hawkinson, $100 less expensive than Kittle, Ben, coming off an 8-target game. But since week 3, he's been pretty quiet, as Jordan mentioned, faced a Chicago team that's limited tight ends quite well. What are you doing in that 5K range?
I have no problem, with Hawkinson. Again, he's in a very, very good game, and he's, I think just a fine player in the mid fives. But Kittle, you mentioned against Arizona, if they have any shot, they're going to have to score. I respect the Niners defense, but the way Arizona's programmed right now, they're going to find ways. And Kittle should be, regardless of who's under center, really, really busy. The injury doesn't look like anything that's hampering him in a big way. So I like him as my preferred pay up, but there is a tight end kind of in that next tier that is definitely my favorite tight end on the slate.
Talk to me.
I'm going to Mike Gesicki. Slow start to the year. I think this is a fantastic spot. 18 targets in the last 2 games. He had 12 against the Raiders. Found the end zone finally against Indy. We saw Tampa last week. I know it was in the rain and whatnot. One of the only success they had was they were getting to the tight ends. Jonnu, Hunter Henry. I think this is a perfect spot. Miami's going to be trailing. We just talked about Parker and Waddle. There's plenty of targets to go around. I think Gesicki underneath is going to have a huge day. 4,200 in a perfect game script. He's starting to really garner some serious target share after he was held to 0 everything in week 1. That's just a straight throwaway. Since then, he's been fantastic. I expect that to continue.
All right. I'll give you one more that might be a little off the beaten path as well. And then Jordan, you can close out the tight end position. Give me Zach Ertz. This is actually a spot where we've seen it all year, and we saw it last year in his limited starts, that Jalen Hurts targets his tight ends quite a bit. And while Dallas Goedert has made a lot of those splash plays and got into the end zone last week, it's actually Ertz that has 15 targets over the last 2 weeks compared to Goddard's 9. He has 4 targets inside the 20 and a goal line target or inside the 5-yard line. So Ertz is actually getting a lot of red zone usage. You're getting him at a significant discount for someone like Dallas Goedert. And Carolina, from a pass rush standpoint, given this Eagles offensive line, sure, they did a decent job, the piecemealed offensive line of holding up, but I think they could have some trouble this week. And if that's the case, I could see Hurts getting the ball quick out to Zach Ertz and targeting him in goal-to-go situations and in the red zone. At that price, with the volume he's seeing, I'll go to Zach Ertz at 3,400. Who do you got for us, Jordan?
I got Hunter Henry. This Houston Texans defense has given up a lot of points to tight end so far. Tremble scored. Dawson Knox scored two touchdowns last week. And in week 1 against the Jaguars, you had O'Shaughnessy and Manhurts combined for 70 and 7 catches and a touchdown. I think this is just a good spot for Hunter Henry. And I think like the Patriots are either going to just run the ball with Damian Harris or try to get Mack Jones throwing the ball and scoring touchdowns and continue that, or building him as a quarterback of the future.
All right. 550 people watching, 141 likes. We can do better than that. We can do much better than that. And all we ask before we head out, hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, get us to 100,000, Ben. Seems reasonable.
Yeah, today, just everyone, if everybody does it, it'll go a lot faster. But no, it's really exciting to see us building these numbers. And it's not just here. I know me and Lofty, we've been on the Fantasy Football channel yesterday. I was on the Awesemo Odds channel. We've been doing college football over there. Jordan's hopping in with me and Matt this week. So a lot going on. If you like betting, Awesemo Odds. If you like season-long or Awesemo season-long fantasy football channel, we really have you guys covered across the board.
No question. Yeah, we'd love to have you come check it out. I got a start-sit video coming up. Put a ton of time into those. I think you will appreciate it, whether DFS, season-long player, whatever. And yeah, the odds channel, Ben said it all. Doing fantastic. Doing God's work over there, Ben. Which, by the way, this Midnight Mass show on Netflix, it's some weird shit, man. Let me tell you. Did you watch Squid Game yet, Jordan Klein? Remember I told you about that a couple of weeks ago? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a weird one, man. Just a lot of. Did you see it, Jordan, Ben? You guys see it?
I haven't seen it, but it's the most popular show in the world. There was actually I think it was in North Korea. There's a company that like does bandwidth for them that's suing Netflix because of how many people are on the internet watching the show.
I have trouble believing that's in North Korea.
I think it was in Korea. I saw Korea was the only thing that I saw, and that's what I read in the article.
Sure. Oh yeah. I'm saying. I mean, Ben, you would know better than me. I don't know if North Korea is controlling bandwidth to South Korea, right?
No, I think it would be the other way.
Are you allowed to have internet in North Korea?
I mean, I'm sure it's state controlled. I think they've got some, power issues where the South, they help them restore power to keep the lights on sometimes.
For those of you guys who have seen Squid Game, you will agree with me. The acting of the VIPs almost ruins the entire series.
Can you give me like just a 10-second? What is this? Is it about squids?
No.
The game is called Squid Game. Essentially, you play like kids games and you get murdered if you lose.
Sounds like something that I invented and they stole my idea.
We should call them Ben games, and it would be no different whatsoever. You should probably watch it for that reason.
Yeah, this might be a copyright infringement situation. So next week, I'll get back to people on that.
The problem is I don't want you drawing inspiration from it.
No, I got it. Don't worry. It's all up here.
They drew inspiration from you. All right. Defenses. Down here under 3K, rapid fire. Jordan, who do you got first?
There's so many defenses under 3K this week. I did not expect that, but I'm going to go with the Jaguars against Tennessee if Julio and AJ Brown are both missing again. I went to the Jets this past weekend and Tannehill got sacked 7 times. It worked. So I'll go back to the well if Julio and AJ Brown are missing.
Okay. I can get down with that. I actually had them listed as well. Ben, I have a couple more, so you go first, and then I'll throw in whatever you guys don't get to.
I mean, this is truly just a macro buy. The numbers this year would lead you to believe this isn't the case. I still think that Washington has the ability to put pressure on the passer, but we have not seen it at all this year. They're at home against the Saints team where, again, Jameis, I do think he's evolved a little bit as a playmaker, but I still think it's in there, those big-time mistake games. So I'll go to Washington at basically the min.
Okay. I'll go with Vegas. Look, I don't think they have a very good defense, but I have zero faith right now in Justin Fields. I'm not saying that, look, he managed that game the best anyone could ever manage a football game. Okay. Sure. Attempted 17 passes, but that was against the Detroit offense. That was just the beleaguered offense. We talk about, sure, what they can do against Minnesota. I get all of that, but Vegas can still put points on the board, and I assume they will. I think you get Fields to make some mistakes. He was sacked 9 times in a game earlier in the year, and they're going to be without David Montgomery. That's confirmed at this point. So I think a lot of things could go wrong for Chicago in a West Coast game playing in Vegas. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Las Vegas Raiders have a solid defensive game, even though this hasn't been a stout defense on the year. Anyway, hit Ben up on Twitter at JazzRazDFS, Jordan at Jordan Vanek DFS, myself at Lafayette_D. Appreciate you guys hanging with us. As always, hit that thumbs up and subscribe before you go, and we will catch you back here for the next one. Peace.